Welcome to African Folktales by Tammy. Please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more interesting stories. Also share this story to someone who might be interested. Let's get into the story. Once upon a time, in the bustling city of Akunlayo, there lived a young woman named Oluchi. She was a maid in the lavish mansion of the Ibrahim family, known for their immense wealth and influence. Oluchi, despite her humble origins, was a hard-working and kind-hearted woman. Her days were spent tirelessly cleaning, cooking, and attending to the whims of the Ibrahim family. She worked not out of love for the family, but out of necessity, sending every penny she earned to her aging parents in her village. The Ibrahim family was headed by Madam Ibrahim, a woman of great pride who valued appearances above all else. Her only son, Del, was the apple of her eye. Della was a man spoiled by wealth and privilege. He grew up believing the world owed him everything, and he treated those he deemed beneath him with disdain. Though the servants whispered about his reckless behavior, Madam Ibrahim turned a blind eye, excusing his actions as mere youthful exuberance. One fateful evening, as the mansion basked in the glow of crystal chandeliers and soft music played from the grand piano, Oluchi finished her chores and prepared to retire to her small room in the servants' quarters. The day had been long, and her body ached from the endless cleaning and errands. She was just about to climb the staircase when Del called out to her. "Oluchi," his voice boomed. She froze, unsure of what he wanted. "Yes, sir," she responded timidly, her hands nervously clutching the edges of her apron. "Come here," he ordered, his tone commanding and sharp. Reluctantly she obeyed, her heart pounding. As she approached, she noticed the faint smell of alcohol on his breath. His usually sharp eyes were glassy, and his posture was unsteady. Del smirked as he leaned closer, his gaze lingering on her in a way that made her skin crawl. "You work so hard, Oluchi," he said, his voice laced with mock kindness. "Why don't you relax for a bit, spend some time with me?" "Sir, I still have to clean the dining hall," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. But before she could step away, he grabbed her wrist, his grip firm and unyielding. Fear coursed through her veins as she realized she was trapped. "Don't act like you're too good for me," he sneered. His words were sharp, cutting into her dignity. What followed was a nightmare. Del forced himself on her, ignoring her cries and pleas for mercy. The grand mansion, once a place of work and routine, became a prison of horror for Oluchi. When he was done, Del simply walked away, leaving her broken and sobbing on the cold marble floor. The next morning, Oluchi summoned every ounce of courage she had and approached Madam Ibrahim. Surely, she thought, a mother would understand the gravity of what her son had done. But her hopes were crushed the moment she opened her mouth. "How dare you?" Madam Ibrahim spat, her eyes blazing with fury. "You think you can ruin my son's reputation with your lies? You're nothing but a common maid." "No, ma," Oluchi pleaded, tears streaming down her face. "I swear I'm telling the truth." "Get out of my house," Madam Ibrahim declared coldly. "You're fired, and if you breathe a word of this to anyone, I'll make sure you regret it." With nowhere to go and no one to turn to, Oluchi was cast out into the streets of Akunlayo. She carried with her nothing but her torn dignity and a heart full of despair. Little did she know the life growing inside her would one day turn her pain into triumph. But for now, as the cold wind bit at her skin and darkness enveloped her, Oluchi's only thought was survival. After being thrown out of the Ibrahim mansion, Oluchi wandered the streets of Akunlayo with nothing but the clothes on her back and an overwhelming sense of despair. The city, with its glittering lights and ceaseless activity, now felt cold and unwelcoming. She had no family nearby and nowhere to turn, but the thought of the life growing inside her gave her a glimmer of hope. Days turned into weeks, and Oluchi struggled to find shelter and sustenance. Eventually, she found a small rundown room in a crowded slum on the outskirts of the city. The roof leaked during the rains and the walls were cracked, but to Oluchi, it was a sanctuary. She worked tirelessly, taking up any job she could find, washing clothes, selling fruits by the roadside, and cleaning houses. The money she earned barely covered her rent and meals, but she managed to survive. As her pregnancy progressed, the physical toll became harder to bear. Some of her employers dismissed her when they noticed her growing belly, claiming she wouldn't be able to handle the work. Still, Oluchi refused to give up. She was determined to bring her child into the world and provide a life better than the one she had endured. When the time came, Oluchi gave birth to a baby boy. Alone in her cramped room, she named him Emeka, meaning God has done well. The moment she held him in her arms, she felt a surge of love and purpose that erased the pain of her past. Emeka became her reason to live, her source of strength. Life as a single mother was far from easy. Oluchi worked multiple jobs, often leaving home before sunrise and returning late at night. She carried Emeka on her back to markets and job sites, feeding him as she worked. Her hands became calloused, her feet blistered, but her determination never wavered. As Emeka grew older, he began to notice the sacrifices his mother made. He saw how she skipped meals so he could eat and how she mended his worn-out clothes late into the night. Though they were poor, Oluchi instilled in him the values of hard work, integrity, and gratitude. "Always remember, my son," she would say, "life is not about what you have, but what you do with what you're given." Emeka excelled in school despite the challenges. While other children came to class with new uniforms and books, he made do with second-hand items and handwritten notes. His teachers noticed his intelligence and determination, often praising him for his efforts. One day, a local foundation announced a scholarship competition for underprivileged children. Oluchi encouraged Emeka to apply, and he threw himself into preparing for the exam. When the results were announced, Emeka emerged as the top scorer. The scholarship covered his tuition and provided a stipend, easing some of the financial burden on Oluchi. As Emeka advanced through school, he remained focused on his dream of creating a better life for his mother. He juggled part-time jobs to support her while excelling academically. Years later, he graduated with honors in business administration. His success was not just a victory for him, but a testament to Oluchi's sacrifices. Emeka soon started Bright Path Enterprises, a company dedicated to providing employment opportunities to the underprivileged. Within a few years, it became one of the most successful firms in Akunlayo. Oluchi, once mocked and ostracized, now held her head high as the proud mother of a self-made man. Though life had tested her in unimaginable ways, Oluchi had triumphed through sheer will and love. But as she basked in her son's success, neither of them knew that fate had a way of bringing the past back to the present. Years passed and the name Emeka Chukwuma, CEO of Bright Path Enterprises, became synonymous with success and innovation in Akunlayo. From humble beginnings, Emeka had built an empire using his story to inspire others. His company not only thrived in profits but also in purpose, offering scholarships, mentorship, and employment opportunities to underprivileged youths like himself. For Oluchi, life had transformed into a dream. Gone were the days of endless struggles and sleepless nights. Emeka had bought her a spacious home in one of Akunlayo's finest neighborhoods, where she now spent her days hosting community gatherings and supporting young women with similar stories of resilience. People who once sneered at her now sought her advice and admired her strength. While Oluchi and Emeka flourished, another life took a different turn. Dele Ibrahim, the man who had once caused Oluchi so much pain, was living in disgrace. When Dele's parents passed away, he inherited their vast wealth and properties. But his reckless lifestyle, filled with parties, mistresses, and gambling, soon consumed it all. He made bad investments, trusted the wrong people, and refused to listen to anyone who warned him about his behavior. Within a few years, Dale lost everything. The sprawling mansion he once lived in was auctioned off. His fleet of luxury cars disappeared one by one to settle debts. The friends who once surrounded him vanished as his wealth dried up. Alone and destitute, Dele found himself living in a rundown apartment, struggling to make ends meet. In his desperation, he roamed the streets of Akunlayo, searching for jobs. But his reputation as an unreliable, entitled man preceded him. No one was willing to give him a chance. One morning, Dele stood outside a grand office building, staring up at the name Bright Path Enterprises etched into the glass facade. Unaware of who the CEO was, Dele decided to try his luck. He walked into the lobby, nervous but hopeful. Inside the pristine office, Dele approached the receptionist. "I'm here to apply for a job," he said, his voice trembling. The receptionist handed him a form, but as he filled it out, a tall, confident man stepped into the lobby. It was Emeka. Dressed in a sharp suit, he exuded authority and grace. As their eyes met, a flash of recognition crossed Emeka's face. Della, oblivious, handed over his application form. But before he could speak, Emeka's cold voice cut through the air. "You," Emeka said, his tone icy. "Do you know who I am?" Dell frowned, confused. I don't think we've met before." Emeka's jaw tightened. "Oh, we've met. You just don't remember me, but I remember you, Del Ibrahim." Realization dawned on Dell's face. He staggered back, his hands trembling. "You're Oluchi's son?" Emeka's gaze burned with anger. "That's right. I'm the son of the woman you destroyed, the woman you threw away like she was nothing. And now you have the audacity to walk into my company asking for a job?" Dele fell to his knees. "Please, Emeka, I'm desperate. I've lost everything. I just need a chance." Emeka stared at him, his heart pounding. Memories of his mother's suffering flooded his mind. Without hesitation, he turned to the security guards. "Escort him out," Emeka commanded. "He doesn't belong here." The guards dragged Dale out as he begged for mercy. Emeka, his fists clenched, watched in silence. But that evening, Oluchi learned of what had happened and confronted her son. "Emeka," she said gently, "I understand your pain, but holding on to this anger will only poison you. Please give him a chance, not for his sake, but for yours." Emeka was torn. Could he let go of the bitterness that had fueled him for so long? The night after Oluchiki confronted Emeka, the weight of her words lingered in his mind. He couldn't shake the image of Dele on his knees begging for a chance. The thought of granting him mercy felt like a betrayal of his mother's pain, yet the values she instilled in him whispered otherwise. As Emeka wrestled with his emotions, Dele wandered the streets of Akunlayo, his humiliation still fresh. He had once been a man of immense wealth and privilege, and now he couldn't even secure a job as a janitor. Everywhere he went, doors were slammed in his face and whispers followed him. "Isn't that Dele Ibrahim?" one person said. "Yes, the one who wasted all his family's fortune," another replied, laughing. Dell's nights were spent in a small, dingy shelter where he shared a room with strangers and fought off the gnawing hunger that never seemed to leave. His mind drifted back to the past, to the life he once had. He thought of Oluchi and the cruel way his family had treated her. Regret began to creep into his heart, though he doubted it would make a difference now. The next morning, Emeka called his mother. "Mama," he said softly, "I've been thinking about what you said." "And?" Oluchi asked, hope tinging her voice. "I don't know if I can forgive him," Emeka admitted. "But for you, I'll give him a chance." Oluchi's heart swelled with pride. "Thank you, my son. Remember, forgiveness isn't for him, it's for you. Don't let his actions define who you are." Later that day, Emeka asked his assistant to locate Dele and bring him back to Bright Path Enterprises. When Dele arrived, his face was a mixture of confusion and desperation. "You're giving me another chance?" he asked cautiously. "Don't mistake this for forgiveness," Emeka said sternly. "I'm offering you a job because my mother taught me to be better than those who wronged us. You'll start as a janitor. Take it or leave it." Dale nodded quickly. "Thank you. I won't let you down." Dale began working at Bright Path the next day. Cleaning floors and emptying trash bins was a far cry from the life he once knew, but he approached the work with humility. He kept his head down and focused on his tasks, determined to prove he was no longer the arrogant man he had been. The employees whispered about the fallen man who had once been a symbol of privilege and power. Some pitied him, others mocked him. But Dell ignored them, silently carrying the burden of his mistakes. Though Emeka had granted Dele the job, he couldn't bring himself to interact with him. Every time he saw Dele, anger bubbled to the surface. Memories of his mother's struggles haunted him. One evening, Oluchi sat with Emeka in their home. "How is he doing?" she asked. "He's working hard," Emeka admitted. "But I still can't look at him without feeling angry." "That's normal," Oluchi said. "Healing takes time. But holding on to anger won't bring peace. Give yourself grace, my son. Let forgiveness come naturally." Emeka nodded, though he wasn't sure if he could ever truly forgive Dell. Della's dedication didn't go unnoticed. Over time, his work ethic and humility began to earn him respect among the staff. One day, Emeka walked into the office and found Dell scrubbing the floor. For the first time, Emeka paused, observing the man who had once been his greatest enemy. Maybe he's changing, Emeka thought, but the scars of the past were still too fresh for him to let his guard down. Dell continued his work at Bright Path Enterprises day by day, silently rebuilding his dignity. Though the work was menial, he treated it with a seriousness that surprised those around him. The once arrogant man who had squandered his fortune was now scrubbing floors and emptying trash bins without complaint. Emeka, meanwhile, observed him from a distance. Though he remained cold toward Dell, his mother's words echoed in his mind. One evening, as Oluchi and Emeka sat together at the dinner table, Oluchi broached the subject again. "Emeka, you've done well to give him a chance," she said, her gentle voice soothing. "But you're still holding on to anger." Emeka sighed, pushing his food around his plate. "Mama, I can't forget what he did to you. Every time I look at him, I see the pain he caused." Oluchi placed her hand on his. "My son, forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing to move forward, even when the past still hurts. You've built a life of integrity and compassion. Don't let bitterness dim that light." Emeka nodded slowly. Though he still struggled, his mother's words began to soften the edges of his anger. Dell's work at Bright Path wasn't without challenges. The staff often gossiped about him, mocking his fall from grace. "Did you hear? That janitor used to be a millionaire," one employee whispered. "Now he's cleaning floors. Serves him right," another sneered. Dell heard their words but refused to react. Instead, he focused on his tasks, determined to prove he could change. One day, as he was cleaning the lobby, a young employee accidentally spilled coffee all over a stack of important papers. Panicking, she tried to clean it up, but the mess only grew worse. Dell stepped in, calming her down and helping her salvage the documents. "Thank you," she said, her voice trembling. "It's nothing," Dell replied with a faint smile. "Mistakes happen." Word of the incident spread, and for the first time some employees began to see Dell in a different light. Despite his lingering anger, Emeka couldn't ignore the reports he was hearing about Dell's hard work and humility. One day he called his assistant into his office. "How's the janitor doing?" he asked casually. "Mr. Ibrahim? He's been working harder than anyone expected," the assistant replied. "He even helped one of our new employees with a major mishap last week. People are starting to respect him." Emeka leaned back in his chair, conflicted. Could it be that the man who had caused so much pain was finally changing? Later that week, Emeka decided to confront Dell directly. He found him cleaning the main hallway, his once pristine suit replaced by a faded uniform. "Dell," Emeka called, his voice firm. Dell turned, surprised. "Yes, sir." Emeka studied him for a moment before speaking. "Why are you still here? You could have run away, like you always do." Dell lowered his gaze. "I'm tired of running, Emeka. I've lost everything because of my own foolishness. This is the first time in my life I've had to earn something, and I'm not giving up." Emeka's chest tightened. He wanted to believe Dele, but the wounds of the past were still raw. "This doesn't erase what you did," he said coldly. "I know," Dell replied softly, "but I'm trying to be better even if it's too late." For the first time, Emeka saw a glimmer of sincerity in Dell's eyes. That night, Emeka shared the conversation with his mother. Oluchi listened intently, her heart swelling with pride for her son's willingness to confront his pain. "You've done more than enough, my son," she said. "But forgiveness isn't about him, it's about freeing yourself. Take it one step at a time." As Emeka lay in bed that night, he realized that perhaps forgiveness wasn't about Dell at all. It was about letting go of the anger that had defined so much of his life. The next morning, as the sun rose over the bustling city of Akunleo, Emeka arrived Bright Path Enterprises with a decision weighing heavily on his heart. For years he had carried the burden of anger and resentment toward Dell, the man who had brought so much pain to his family. But his mother's wisdom had shown him a path forward, a path that required strength far greater than revenge. Emeka summoned Dele to his office. When Dell entered, he looked uneasy, unsure of what to expect. The polished grandeur of the office, with its high ceilings and glass walls, was a stark contrast to his current reality as a janitor. "You wanted to see me, sir?" Dell asked, standing awkwardly by the door. Emeka gestured for him to sit, his expression unreadable. "Yes, sit down." Dele hesitated before taking a seat, his posture tense. For weeks I've watched you work, Emeka began. I've seen you endure ridicule and humiliation without complaint. I've heard how you've helped others, even when you didn't have to. It seems you've changed. Dale looked down at his hands, calloused and rough from weeks of cleaning. I've had no choice but to change, Emeka. Losing everything teaches you lessons wealth can't. Emeka leaned forward, his gaze piercing. Do you regret what you did to my mother? Dell's shoulders sagged under the weight of the question. Every single day, I was a fool, blinded by privilege and arrogance. I can't undo the past, but if I could go back, I'd do things differently. I know that doesn't mean much now, but it's the truth. For a long moment, silence filled the room. Emeka studied Dele, searching for any sign of deceit. But all he saw was a broken man who had finally realized the consequences of his actions. That evening, Emeka returned home and shared the conversation with Oluchi. She listened quietly, nodding as he recounted Dale's words. He seems sincere, Emeka admitted. But how do I know it's not just an act? You don't, Oluchi replied. But forgiveness isn't about certainty. It's about freeing yourself from the chains of the past. You've given him a chance to work, but now you must give yourself the chance to heal. Let go of the anger, my son. It's time, Emeka sighed deeply. You're right, Mama. You always are. The following week, Emeka called an all-staff meeting. The employees gathered in the large conference hall, murmuring curiously about what the CEO had planned. Della stood at the back of the room, his janitor's uniform setting him apart from the rest. Emeka took the stage, his commanding presence silencing the crowd. Today I want to talk about second chances, he began. Every person in this room has made mistakes. Some big, some small, but what defines us is not our mistakes, it's how we choose to grow from them. He paused, letting his words sink in. Many of you know Dele Ibrahim. You've whispered about his past, judged him for his fall from grace. But what you don't see is the man he's become. He has worked tirelessly, humbling himself and proving that he is capable of change. The room was silent as Emeka turned to Dele. Dele, step forward. Dale hesitated, then walked to the front, his head bowed. I'm promoting you to a managerial position in our facilities department, Emeka announced. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Dale's eyes widened in disbelief. You're giving me another chance? Yes, Emeka replied firmly, but don't mistake this for forgiveness. You'll have to prove yourself every day. This is your opportunity to rebuild your life. Don't waste it. Dale threw himself into his new role with determination. Though he still faced skepticism from some employees, he gradually earned their respect through his dedication and willingness to learn. Over time, his contributions to Bright Path Enterprises became invaluable. As the months turned into years, Emeka's anger began to fade. While he never fully embraced Dele as a father, he acknowledged his efforts to change. For Oluchi, seeing her son and Dele coexist peacefully brought her a sense of closure. Dele's journey from privilege to poverty and finally to redemption became a powerful lesson for all who knew him. Oluchi's unwavering compassion and Emeka's strength to forgive showed that even the deepest wounds could heal with time, humility, and love. And so in the city of Akunleyo, the story of Oluchi, Emeka, and Dele became a timeless tale of resilience, redemption, and the power of second chances. We've come to the end of this story. Please subscribe to my channel to support me. Thank you.